Hi everybody! So I have recently been getting an influx of questions from people, and I'm really grateful that you guys trust me to kind of talk honestly about my opinions and my experiences and really help you in transitioning or deciding whether or not you want to go into the UX UI field. As an educator, it's who I am at heart and what I really love to do. And I love helping people, especially other BCBAs, who are looking to really kind of get a break, figure out if the field is right for them, either the BCBA or the UX world, and kind of what else they can do on their skill sets. It's super important. So I kind of want to talk about one of my most common questions, which is, how do I get into UX research? And I think the most important question here is really, do you want to do UX research or do you want to do UX UI design? Because those two are very different things. And sometimes, depending on what company you're in, the UX designer has to also do UX research. So it's always good to know UX research, but also having UX design is also not a bad idea either. Understanding both fields is really helpful because a lot of times they do intermingle and work together. So, how to get into UX research? I like to say there's two options. There's either one, the self-taught method, and two, the bootcamp option. So there is at the moment no bootcamp option, in a sense of there is no UX research specific bootcamp. What you would do is you would have to go to a bootcamp for just UX UI designing. However, during these UX UI boot camps, you do a complete project from beginning to end, from conception of idea to implementation and execution of the idea of what an application could look like. And UX and UI design, don't get it wrong, can be outside of technology. Is just most commonly known and understood to be a part of technological apps and features and things like that. So in a UX UI bootcamp, what you end up doing is you do a lot of exploratory research. So these are things like secondary research, competitive analysis, understanding the problem, affinity mapping, empathy mapping, and affinity mapping, empathy mapping to create a persona. And then once you create the personas, you can then start writing user stories, which is more project management. And then you can start doing user flows, which is more UX designing. But those are all good research type of tools and methodologies that UX researchers use every day, right? Especially the interviewing skills, like when you're interviewing people for the affinity maps and the empathy maps and personas. So interviewing skills is highly recommended that you refine and really polish. And in a boot camp, someone can help you identify what makes good research questions and not good research questions. Afterwards, you do your design in the boot camp, and then you start doing usability testing. So that's another big methodology in the field, usability testing. Can people use your product as intended? But also within usability testing, you can also do interviewing, right? And then you can take the time to also really learn more about user behavior to work on future iterations of your project. So you have usability testing and researching at the end, and then you once again are doing affinity mapping of your results, and then you're creating a result readout based on what you've learned. So the UX UI bootcamp is great in a sense of you learn both worlds, right? So when you go and apply for jobs, you're not strictly limiting yourself to only UX research. You can look for jobs that are also UX UI designing. And that's the route that I kind of went. As a BCBA, I felt I had limited myself really when I went to do a BCBA specific master's, because in the ABA world, it's really only ABA or OBM in the end, right? So I wanted to, when I did my career change, make sure that I could do UX research, but also if I wanted to pivot to be a designer, I at least had the foundation to do that and the understanding to do that. So I personally went through a boot camp, and boot camps are nice because they also teach you how to build a portfolio that gets you noticed by employers. So my portfolio actually had no real research project. It was all UX UI designing projects. But however, there were research in those projects. So when I got the interviews, I could really talk about the research that I did specifically in those projects, even though they were not research specific. So hopefully that makes sense. And obviously those boot camps can be a little bit more expensive. They can be about like $7,000 to $15,000, if not more, and they might require you to be full-time or part-time. So, you know, I have other videos about the bootcamp that I went to that you can definitely check out if you're interested. But let's say you're not really sure and you're just kind of trying to check things out. How do you kind of get started? So I would definitely recommend, if you're getting started, to first figure out, do you want to do only UX research or do you want to do UX UI? And if you're not sure, I definitely recommend talking to people, doing some research, watching the videos, you know, talk to people. But another good way to do it is start with the Google UX course. So the Google UX course, I do not advocate for. I don't think that you should say you're a designer after you take it. I don't think that you should, there's not a lot of weight in the Google UX course because you're not really getting feedback from mentors. You're getting feedback from other people who don't know the field. So it's like two people who don't know what's happening are critiquing and mentoring each other, and it's like it's not gonna be a good time, right? So what I recommend is get the UX course and just read the materials. Don't do the project, just read the materials to see if it makes sense, to see if it's something that you're interested in. And if you think that you might be interested in the more design, creative aspect of it, then yes, go maybe check out a boot camp for UX UI or look into a major change into UX UI, something like that. However, if you feel like you know for sure that like you want to do UX research or you go through the bootcamp, the Google course, and you're like, I really like the research part of this Google course, not so much the design part. Okay, then let's go to UX research. And if you want to self-teach, this is the way I would do it. So you will need a portfolio. You will always need a portfolio no matter what. And on this portfolio, I recommend you have three cases that shows you and your research work. And these 3 cases should be 3 different methodologies and 3 different studies. And what's really nice about UX research is that when creating these portfolios, like you don't necessarily need to work with another person. In a sense of like, you don't need someone to come up to you and be like, hey, can you design this for me? Or hey, can you help me with this project? Like you can do research on anything you want on your own time. And one of the perfect examples of this is a competitive analysis. So you could pretend, like you can make up your own case study, right? And that's what I would do. Make up your own case study and be like, I'm looking to create a new application, a new video streaming application. And I want to know kind of what my competitors are doing and what I can do to make it better. So the whole research study could just be about a competitive analysis. And you would look up competitive analysis, how to do it. And then you would complete the research of a competitive analysis. So if I'm doing a video streaming website, I might do a competitive analysis of YouTube versus Hulu versus Disney Plus versus Netflix. Do the pros and cons of each, and then have that research report written and, you know, present the findings and put that in your portfolio. So there's a bunch of different methodologies that you can kind of do and use for your research portfolio. The main ones I think that would be best for a beginner: competitive analysis, usability testing, interviewing, and persona work. Those 4. Persona work I would probably suggest as the next easiest one to do after competitive analysis, because you can create a persona for pretty much anything, and it's kind of nice because you also get to tie into affinity mapping within personas, empathy mapping within personas, and interviews within personas. So once again, I would create a scenario. So for example, like I want to make a dog walking app, right? And maybe I want to understand who my personas are. Who are the people that are going to be using my app? Who are the general clumps and groups of people that are going to be using it? And so I write a research plan I write research questions. I write interview questions. I go and I interview 10 people or 5 people to understand their needs, their wants, their hopes for a dog walking app, why they use dog walking apps, and what kind of owners they are, right? Because it's not just about like, what can I do to make a good app? It's also about their general behavior, who they are as a person, how they interact with their dogs. That also affects a lot too. And then after that, you kind of get all your answers and you cluster them and you create 2 personas or more, depends on your interviews. So I could have 2 personas. I could have the dog walker the dog owner who's too busy and needs a dog walker, and the dog owners that are disabled and can't walk their dog. And that's it. The deliverables are, the final products are the 2 personas that I make nice and pretty. And then that's your research project that you put on your portfolio. So there's a bunch of different things that you can do, but as long as you have a portfolio and you can speak to the different methodologies of UX research, I think you will be good to go. Coming from the BCBA field, I felt that I did not need a UX specific boot camp, like a UX research specific boot camp to transition. I hope that makes sense. Like as a BCBA, I felt that the skills I had as a BCBA was transferable enough as is to UX research. Like I did not need to spend a lot of time poring over textbooks, podcasts, etc. to understand UX research methodologies, because as a BCBA, we are trained to already look at motivations, reinforcement, contingencies, etc. and understanding the bigger picture of things that influence someone's behavior. So I would definitely start, if you're want to self-teach into UX research, start with a portfolio, start with your own self-projects, and definitely check out Facebook groups, like UX Research Collective, look on LinkedIn, and ask if people want to even collaborate on UX research projects. Volunteering is also a great option, but if you want to take it slow, take a look at the different methodologies out there, pick 2 or 3 that you're really comfortable with, and just try that out and see what happens. So these are my 2 methods for kind of breaking into UX, either bootcamp or self-teach. Those are my 2 options that I know of, really. But the main question is obviously, first of all, do you want to be a designer or do you want to be a UX researcher? And like I said before, I prefer the bootcamp route because I got knowledge as a UX researcher and as a UX UI designer, so that if need be, I have the foundation set for both positions and I can kind of go out into the world and apply to different types of jobs. But as a BCBA, if you were a BCBA or an ABA RBT person, I think that you have some good foundations for UX research. So if you don't really want to go into UX designing right away, you want to try your hand at UX research, I definitely would do what I recommended for the self-teach method. I think that's super helpful. And of course, if you're at any essentially customer-facing job like HR, real estate, even any therapy or any education field, I think that everyone's a good candidate for UX research. So I hope this helps, and I hope this answers a lot of questions for you guys, and good luck.